Monica will be here shortly, and while we settle in here, hopefully you all got something to eat. This is one of my favorite parish meetings because I really don't have to do very much. I can just sit there and be a congregant like you. All right. In a minute here, Pat will get up and tell us about the agenda, and then we'll get started. So.
He made promises that he'd have this so you could hear me. Now, can you hear me? Good. Well, I join Rob in welcoming you to our forum. It's, to us, means a lot who are members of the Finance Committee, that we get to not only share our work with you, but solicit feedback. And so I hope you see that happening in today's agenda. The good news is that we will start with Monica, who will share with us the third quarter update. And we always are looking ahead. That's what I like about this experience of being on the Finance Committee. We hardly get through 1 year of putting a budget together, starting the pledge campaign, and all of a sudden Monica says, I have some numbers for you to look at. And here we are projecting next year. And I feel very positive that we are starting in the right direction to do that with our, now, proposed budget, so we want feedback from you. We will move on to the annual campaign update, and that continues the Monica and Molly show. Molly will be joining us, but there's an addition on the agenda that talks about Matthew joining us on the capital campaign also. The good news is that he's assisting with the capital campaign. The sad news is he's leaving chairmanship of the Finance Committee. And I must tell you, I've been through 3 or 4 chairmans, and he gets A+. So we're happy to share him with the capital campaign, but we're sorry to see him leave the Finance Committee. So there's some big shoes that need to be filled very quickly. Also on the Finance Committee is Marge, who, sorry to say, just might bit into a sandwich from the representative from the board, and Alyssa, who could not be with us today because, like all of us, there's a flu bug that has caught up with her, but another wonderful person has been added to our Finance Committee. And of course, our executive director is always there, not only with work for us to review at the committee meetings, but she also sends us lots of material ahead of time. So you have to have a good working computer to be on the Finance Committee. And finally, I don't want to say finally, but I know you've been waiting for an update on the Sanctuary Initiative, and Dorrit Bergen will share that with us. And then, as I said, questions and feedback at the end are very important. So with that, I know Monica has a wonderful slideshow to share with us. It's been previewed by both the Finance Committee and the board. And that doesn't mean that they add to it. That means that we collapse down to just the important points. So again, thank you for coming. Be sure at the end of the day, if you haven't signed in, to sign in on the clipboard on your way out. Thank you for being with us on this beautiful day.
Well, we can go backwards. Hey, that's good. But we can't seem to go forward. Yeah, it's not going. There we go. All right. Hello, everybody. She has my inner Joni Mitchell today. I'll bring my guitar and give it to you. Get her started. Great. Hello, everyone. I'm Monica Nolan. It's good to be in front of you all again. So we're going to dive right in. I see a lot of familiar faces, but I did want to provide this first slide in case you're not familiar with our financial landscape. So as you can see behind me, we have three primary funds or accounts. Those are the capital fund, the designated and restricted fund, and the operating fund. And there's a myriad of revenue sources that you can see at the top of the slide there that go into those three, and then a number of expenditures, obviously. So I'm going to start by telling you the story of our current financials as of March 31st, which is the end of our third quarter. And there's two narratives in this story right now. One is that we have a ton to be grateful for, right? We've got these fabulous staff members, we have a robust operating budget, we have dedicated parishioners, all of which enable us to continue to thrive in the pursuit of our fiscal priorities, which I'll share a little bit more about at the end of this portion of the presentation. And then on the other hand, we know that in part we continue to lean on our capital fund and our designated and restricted fund to support our operating fund needs, thus slowly depleting our cash on hand. So for example, you can see our total cash on hand as of March 31st, 2017, was nearly $277,000. Last year at this time, that cash on hand was closer to $437,000. So the story of our current financials is that we do have diminishing capital funds and designated and restricted funds. We will zero those out in the coming years if we don't either increase income or decrease expenses. I think we'll do both of those things, and I'll circle back to how and why at the end. But let's first take a closer look at the capital fund as it stood at the end of the third quarter. We had nearly $154,000 in that account. You can see that we, year to date, have seen about $38,000 in income, $57,000 in expenses, bringing us to a net loss of $19,000. So we earned approximately $4,000 less than budgeted, spent approximately $2,000 more than budgeted, and netted year-to-date about $6,000 less than budgeted. If we want to take a peek at the restricted and designated fund account, you can see that we've seen $291,000 in income, $120,000 in expenses, thus netting $171,000. So we earned approximately $70,000 more than budgeted. We spent approximately $500 more than budgeted, and we have netted approximately $69,000 more than budgeted. So our account balance at the end of the third quarter was $158,000. And let me just share three highlights from the designated and restricted fund. The music fund, the eviction prevention fund, and the art fair fund are all doing quite well. You can see that we've seen $27,000 in new income in that music fund, about $21,000 in the eviction prevention fund, and $9,000 in the art fair fund, thus bringing their respective budgets, or fund balances, I should say, to $91,000, $26,000, and $25,000. So getting back to that narrative that I started at the beginning, I hope you'll remember that last year as a parish, we moved forward in approving that first quarterly operating budget, thus giving ourselves 4 financial benchmarks to measure ourselves against as we proceed through the fiscal year. So this is as opposed to just one annual budget. And the quarterly budget was created based on a look back at our historical performance over the last 4 years. And we learned, based on that analysis, that it's not unusual for FUS to experience a third quarter deficit, as our expenses stay about the same throughout the year. However, our income significantly lowers in the third quarter. So let me tell you a little bit more about that third quarter deficit, not to be confused with an annual deficit, right? We still have 3 months left in the year. But we anticipated, and you all approved in our operating budget, a third quarter deficit of around negative $47,000. The third quarter deficit did occur. However, it was larger than we anticipated by about $28,000, bringing us to a deficit of $75,000. So this, in large part, is a story of pledge payments. Let me tell you more about those. Before I do, though, actually, let's take a quick look at the operating fund balance, or I should say the year-to-date actuals. You can see that we've experienced $1,324,000 approximately of income year-to-date. Expenses have, at the end of that third quarter, were $1,399,000, and that net income, as I mentioned before, is around negative $75,000. So we've earned about $54,000 less than budgeted, spent approximately $26,000 less than budgeted. So we pulled back on expenses as we saw that income was not quite where we wanted it to be. Thus, we've netted about $28,000 less than budgeted year to date, which is about a 1.4% deviation from that annual budget. So as promised, let's circle back to those pledge payments. So year to date, we've seen $872,000 of marvelous pledge payments. We had budgeted $921,000, which means we're about $50,000 under budget with those pledge payments. The amount of total pledge payments that we receive is pretty challenging to calculate or to project forward for, as the average quarterly amount tends to vary by about $50,000, by about 4%, which if you look above at the variance again, that's exactly the amount that we're down in terms of pledge payments. So for example, in one year we might see $342,000 in pledge payments in the third quarter, and the next we'll see $256,000. So on and so forth, each quarter, ups and downs, hard to predict. We are actively engaging members and affiliates that have yet to pay their pledges in full, and encouraging them to do so before June 30th, 2017, the end of our fiscal year. And the light at the end of my tunnel is that our community pays an average of 97 to 98% of its pledges, which is high. When you look at other UU congregations, I've heard something like 91 to 92% is more of an average for them. So that statistic keeps me optimistic that we'll receive the annual pledge payments that we have budgeted for and that we rely on in order to avoid an end-of-year deficit. So before I move us on to our proposed 2017-2018 budgets, I'd like to review this slide that details our fiscal priorities. So if you've come to some of these past meetings, you would have seen this slide twice, and in red you can see some of the updates. So we have improved our membership database software. We retired that old Shelby beast of a database August of 2016 and transitioned to Ministry Platform. Still working out the kinks, but we're feeling really good about that transition. We have continued to retain and support high-quality staff. So we filled the fundraising position with a full-time project coordinator, the first time in many years that's the case. And also we filled the social justice position with a full-time staff member, Tim Corden, who in fact is in the room. Hey, Tim. If you haven't met him yet, he's a joy of a human being. I hope you get to interact with him. We are appropriately expanding our social justice work as promised, in light with that move to a full-time social justice coordinator, and by actively exploring involvement in the sanctuary movement, as well as the many other endeavors that we tackle as part of our social justice work. We continue to implement growth task force strategies intended to welcome our new members and to deepen our current members' connections to FUS. So year to date, I think we've completed about 9 of 13 of those growth task force initiatives, with 4 continuing to be addressed. And then finally, as promised, we are exploring a capital campaign. So we presented the parish back in January with a case statement. That should be online again this next week if you'd like to review it again. And we highly encourage everyone to attend that June 4th parish meeting, where we'll be more thoroughly discussing that capital campaign. So end of year reflections, moving forward. If you are contemplating giving an unpledged donation, now is the time to do so. If you are, and this is highly unlikely, but if you are one of the people that haven't had a chance to stay up to date with your pledge payments, please try to find a way either to call us or to pay now. And then things, I guess I'd like to throw this out there. I believe things will look much different 1 year from today. Our personnel expenses will very likely decrease in light of anticipated retirements. And a capital campaign that includes a partial pay down of the mortgage really could help relieve some of these cash flow issues that I've just detailed that we experienced in the third quarter. So keep thinking about that likely decrease of expenses and increase in income that could be pending for us. All right, so let's move forward and think about the story of next year's budgets. Are y'all sick of me yet? About 30 minutes, okay, thank you. See, I love this, man. Tim, thank you. So I am going to break with tradition a little bit and just tell you a quick story about me. Actually, quit looking at it. Look at me for just 1 second. Has anyone heard about this technique called deep canvassing? I love it. So I just ran into this technique. It's called deep canvassing, and basically it's a model for telling stories. So you're encouraged to tell a story about yourself, tell a story about you, the audience, and then tell a story about us. And in some of the HR work that I do here and just my interactions with other human beings, I found it to be super powerful. So I thought I'd borrow from that technique a little bit and channel my inner Julie Swanson and tell a little story. And actually, I'm going to get a sip of water first, so talk amongst yourself for just a second. I'm back. All right, so the story about me. So it's very recent. So about a week ago, less than a week ago, I went to the Board of Trustees meeting, and I shared these proposed budgets for next year. And I had, the cute little anecdote about the 1.02 proposed growth, and I knew the numbers, and I walked through them quickly and nervously, and I ultimately choked, like real bad. And that was mostly because, in reflection, I didn't share the story of these budgets. I didn't share what was below and above them. And after months of preparation, of listening to deep dialogues with and among staff, with Michael and Kelly's visions, with our lay leaders and our finance committee's wisdom, with the Board of Trustees' aspirations, and my dreams for us, after all those months of preparation, I forgot for a moment that these budgets aren't about addition and subtraction, that they're really about deeply aligning our priorities with our resources. And so I didn't share the spirit then, I didn't share the essence or the heart, and that's what I'll attempt to do for you ever so briefly now. So where are we today? Where are we now? In my mind, our ministerial transition really has arrived. I have the pleasure to continue to work with Michael every day, but we know that we have 1 year left to honor his legacy. And we know we'll do that via wonderful celebrations and demonstrations of gratitude. But more than that, I hope that we can honor him by working in accordance with the messages that he has shared with us these last 30 years. I hope that we can reflect upon that wisdom, think about what it means in light of where we are today, and let it move us forward together with vision. And I think we need to create the time and space to move through that transition really intentionally. So what do these budgets move us towards? I believe that these budgets move us towards deeper parish engagement, both with our institution and with each other. And we're talking about really meaningful parish democracy, inclusion, and engagement. I believe that this next year is a time to set up a future that's deeply rooted in both our unique FUS identity and our 7 principles. And I heard Joe Kramer say this last week that the future is about inclusion, and it may be painful, but we gotta do it. So let's dialogue about the visions that will guide us. Let's be honest with each other when we start to drift away from these ideals. Let's be kind to one another as we start to illuminate the diversity of our perspectives. And let's trust staff to act in accordance with those democratically selected values. These budgets also move us towards supporting staff to better support you. During this year of transitions, I'd like to ensure that staff are fully supported, both because it promotes effectiveness and because it's in line with our values. I'd love to see the Personnel Committee thoroughly explore our HR practices and ask, is this a just workplace? I would really love to see gainful employment of all staff, future and present, and I think now is the time to get our house in order to ensure that we can effectively attract future candidates. Shifting the part-time social justice coordinator and the fundraising project coordinator to full-time will also help us pursue the following two priorities. The first is which we are expanding our justice work together. So by hiring a full-time social justice coordinator, we are enabling that staff member, Tim Corden, to better support our members and volunteers. I think the year ahead may require us to stand for and fight for marginalized individuals and their rights more than we've been asked to in recent memory, and I think we'll need to be prepared to dedicate resources to that task. And then finally, these budgets move us towards asking you to share your resources generously and intentionally. We hope that you'll ask yourself how you can give more of your time and your talents and your treasures. And I promise you, we will not ask this of you every year, but we are asking this of you now. So I hope these budgets encourage you to dedicate yourself to the future of our religious institutions' work. I would encourage you to support and become an active participant of the proposed capital campaign, volunteer your time, and show up when you do, both in body and in spirit. So without further ado, I will now relatively quickly move us through these three different proposed budgets. The first is the proposed operating budget, and you can select to direct your eyes to the budgets that are on the back of your agenda. So I'm going to call out a couple of these categories. Pledge payments in particular. We are proposing an increase of $20,000. So after a few years with no increases, we're encouraging the parish to assist us with a 1.6% growth. When you look at rentals, you'll see that we have a proposed $11,000 or $12,000 increase. Hopefully many of you know it's Frank Lloyd Wright's birthday next year. Fingers crossed, we'll see an increase in tours as a result of that. But also we're projecting income that more closely aligns with our historical averages. Fund transfers are increasing by about $18,000, which will help support specific program expenses in the operating fund. Under program income, you'll see that this is a year that income decreases. When we don't have Quest, we don't have that income. So that's about a $17,500 decrease. And then finally, for fundraising, we're looking at shaking things up a little bit. We'd love to hold a very special fall fundraising event this year, and we are pushing ourselves to increase by $7,500. So now if you'd like to look at expenditures, you can see that our personnel wages will increase by $30,000. In part, that is a result of a 2% cost of living increase that's been offered to all staff members, and the addition, obviously, of a full-time social justice coordinator and fundraising project coordinator. And again, I will remind us all that wages will be recalibrated in next year's budget with those upcoming retirements. Personnel benefits and taxes, so almost a $50,000 increase there. We did budget for a 3% premium increase for health insurance and a 2% increase for dental. There will be 3 additional staff members that are utilizing our health insurance benefits starting next year. And then for programs, you'll see that we're decreasing by $23,000. In part, that's those expenses that are connected to Quest. The other decrease in expenses or program expenses are a result of WMUU. Some of you may have heard, many of you will not have, that after nearly a year of analysis, the Board of Trustees and the staff has selected to start to pursue the transfer of that station to another nonprofit for its management. So cool, nice. We're excited to heavily negotiate to continue to offer our sermons on WMUU, retain some spots on the board. So all of that will be unfolding over the next couple of months. Administrative expenses should decrease by about $8,000 to $9,000. Those reflect in particular, last year we had that computer training to get us on board with ministry platform. We don't need to repeat that this upcoming year. So now to look ever so briefly at the designated and restricted fund budget and the capital fund budget. First, you'll see that our estimated fund balance as of the end of this fiscal year will be around $162,000. We're estimating that by the end of the fiscal year 2018 that that fund balance will be around $113,000. So a net loss of about $50,000. And then finally, the capital fund budget. Oh, was I behind a slide? Nobody told me. So let me let you. Oh, geez. So you all can see this on the back of your agenda. Okay, so capital fund budget. You'll see two lines in particular that are listed as TBD. This budget could be heavily tweaked if a capital campaign is approved. But for now, this is the budget that will guide us. So you'll see that the estimated fund balance at the end of this fiscal year is $155,000. We anticipate by the following fiscal year that fund balance would be down to $50,000. Hopefully that's motivation to approve that capital campaign. We're not anticipating any emergency capital projects, but we are budgeting $15,000 for them just in case. Mortgage will continue to be transferred at the same rate that it has over these last 2 years, which is $45,000. So in closing, I'll remind you one more time that I believe things will look different a year from now. Personnel expenses will decrease. Income will likely increase with a capital campaign. To underline my sentiment, I'm optimistic about the future because I believe that this community is committed to ensuring its own well-being. And I hope that we can embrace our ministerial transition, deepen our levels of engagement with our institution and with each other, support our staff, mindfully expand our justice work, and share our resources very generously and intentionally. The end. So I am going to hand this off to Molly Kelly, who's going to talk a little bit about the current state of our annual campaign for next year. And then I believe she'll hand it off to Matthew to talk a little bit about the capital campaign. And after we hear from Dorit about the sanctuary, we'll open up questions regarding the budget or anything else that you've heard today. Sound good?
Okay. So she's Joni Mitchell. I'm Joan Baez. Will you buy that? So, thank you. Yeah, right. I'll clear this room so fast. So, my story, thanks for the in, is that I'm the full-time project coordinator, and I do the numbers. So I'm here to give you a brief update of our current pledge situation, the 2017-18 pledge campaign. So I have 2 slides. So let's get started. Did I go the right way? No, I did not. There we go. All right. So as we approach the conclusion of our 2017-18 campaign, we are in high gear to finish strong. As of May 5th, we have received 521 pledges totaling $932,870. So that means we are short roughly $287,000. And that's short of our goal of $1.22 million. We do want to point out that we are ahead of last year. And I think that is a wonderful reflection on all of you. So thank you. Last year, at about this time, we were at 504 pledges, totaling $918,000. So we can do this. We can finish this, reaching our goal. It will take all of us to make sure that people pledge. We count on that support. So we're asking, please pledge if you have not done so. Okay, just a reminder, our pledge process involves 2 steps. One is you pledge or communicate the amount you intend to give, and then you pay that pledge starting July 1st, or that's when the new fiscal year starts, and that's when this pledge begins its payment. You can pledge in one of 4 ways. You can do so online at fusmadison.org and click on Give. That will give you the page where you can make a pledge. You can call me. I am more than happy to talk with any of you on the telephone. Call our number, and my extension is 130. And finally, email me if you just want to ask about a current status or what you did last year. I'm happy to help in any way I can. You can also complete a paper form, and those forms are available at our annual campaign table. And of course, a most sincere thank you to everyone who has pledged. We count on your support for this community to thrive. And if it weren't for you, we wouldn't be what we are today. So very much a heartfelt thank you. So that's all I have. I am now going to introduce you, ask Matthew to come up. I'm sure many of you already know him, but I also want to say how grateful I am that he has agreed to be one of our chairs for the upcoming hopeful capital campaign. So Matthew.
Good to see you all this afternoon. Thanks for coming. I'm here to give a pretty brief check-in on where we're at with the capital campaign proposal and what is coming next. It's been a pleasure to join the process and the team of members and staff here who have already put in a lot of really good work into the proposal. And right now we're at a place where we still have some exciting ideas that we're working through and wrapping up our research of those ideas and figuring out how we want to best communicate them back to the congregation. And we are going to spend some time at the next parish meeting working through that proposal together and then voting on it. So that's coming up on June 4th. And there are a lot of different pieces that are going to come into it, which is one of the things that made it so exciting. So one of the other things that I wanted to share is there'll be some considerable focus on the roof and the prow of the landmark building as part of this process. And we just wanted to call out today that our June 4th meeting is probably going to focus more at a top level and the capital campaign in its entirety. And we're going to make space in addition to that to work through some of the details and some of the different options that are on the table for questions of the roof and the prow. And so we've got some of those rough dates for August and September called out here. And feel free to check in online for a recap of the case statement that was distributed previously. And I look forward to talking to all of you again soon in June, and we can get into it more together. Thank you. And next up, we'd like to welcome Dorrit from the board to talk about Sanctuary Church. Thanks, Dorrit.
Hi. Oops. I hope that some of you had a chance to chat with either adults or youth who were at the sanctuary table about what's happening, and I'll explain in a minute why you were asked to sign something. So I'm sorry, there's a mistake up there. That was supposed to say May 3rd, not June 3rd. So the task force decided that starting on May 3rd, we would put on a big push to educate as many of us as possible about issues surrounding this idea of declaring ourselves a sanctuary church. Today, I'm giving an update. May 17th, we'll present our report with any motions that we would like to have the board consider to the board. And then, assuming that they approve, we will be presenting at the June 4th meeting. We recognize that this endeavor, should we decide to undertake it, will be big. And we felt that we needed to know if many, many people here were on board with this, and if they thought they would be willing to do some volunteering with it. And as I'm sure you know, what do we get? Typically between 70 and 100 people at a parish meeting. Even if all of us would vote yes or no, that would be a small fraction of our membership. That's why you were asked to sign something. We're going to do this from now until June 4th, and we're hoping to come to the parish meeting being able to say, I'm making this up, 300 people said, let's do this and we'll help, or said, no, we don't want to do this. There's a lot going on right now, some of the highlights. Those three places, us, Madison Christian Community, which actually is 2 churches in 1 building, and Orchard Ridge UCC, are the furthest along of churches in Madison in this process of thinking about sanctuary. If you were here on March 17th, you heard Mario Garcia from Voces de la Frontera talk to us. He has had subsequent meetings with members of our task force and with clergy in Madison. He is hoping that these institutions that are furthest along will be ready to make a public statement, a joint public statement in June. And the idea is to create a network, not necessarily that each church is going to house somebody, but that if one church actually houses somebody, the other churches will be supporting that effort. It will take a lot of volunteer effort. Just for an example, we would have to have somebody here 24/7, as long as our guest was here. We'd have to provide groceries, food. Likely that person would have children, and they would want to come and see their parent. Even if they got sick, they can't go to the doctor. We would have to find somebody who would be willing to come here, if it was here. I also would I'm happy to tell you that I've been in conversation with Rabbi Lori Zimmerman from Congregation Shirei Shemayim. Monica reached out to that congregation first. We have here with us Arden Rice, who is, do you have an official title there, Arden, with regard to this?
Well, I'm the liaison to the Task Force Sanctuary. I'm also the secretary of the coordinating committee, which is on board.
And I've been invited to attend their board meeting on May 15th, and I'm going. And they haven't voted on this officially, but informally, their decision pretty much is whatever we do, they support. So we'll actually be, if this passes, we would be 4 congregations. I think that's it for right now. Oh, no, I'm sorry, there's one more thing. We are looking into issues of insurance. We are looking into issues of what kind of legal risks are there. And it turns out that it's small, but it's real. And so we're talking about that. And also a reminder to everybody, and everybody you can talk to, if we decide to do this, this is as much or more a strategic political action as it is direct service to somebody in need. It is. But if this works, it will be because there's a lot of public pressure to get the deportation order reversed. So just to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Dory. You're doing a great job. All right. Questions and comments, and I'll referee the questions, but I won't answer them because I won't have the answers. So, I see a hand back there.
Hi, could you Stuart, 2 quick questions. What is the total number of pledge units we have, and who are the members of the sanctuary committee?
Last year, we had a total of 806 pledges, and currently we are at 521. So if we want to do a comparison to last year, 805. 806, excuse me. And as far as the number who are eligible, I mean, we can take a look at our member and list, but they don't always have a history of pledging. It doesn't mean that people don't give, but pledging number would be 806. Does that answer that question? Yes, Doris.
And Dorit can answer the question about who is on the sanctuary group here.
So, this is on.
No.
I am. Yeah, okay. I was asked to chair the Sanctuary Task Force, and Kelly is our minister with the Sanctuary Task Force. At the time, 18 other people signed up to be on the task force. We also have a group of youth that are, the leader there, or coordinator, is Henry O'Gorman, and he is also on the task force. And we've had a couple of people join since then. Is that really?
Next question.
It seems like we're always talking, I'm exaggerating, but roofs are a big deal. And we've talked about and replaced roofs. I don't know, I've been a member since 88. And which roof are we talking about now?
Frank's roof. Monica, do you want
So say repeat the question.
So the question was, what roof are we talking about now? And I think the answer to that is everything is still on the table. Right now, we have a report that's being generated by SRI, Structural Engineering Report, which is looking at various options, both copper and non-copper. So we will definitely talk about that at the forum in July or August, and it might ever so briefly be mentioned in June.
Gail, your question was, which roof are we talking about? We're talking about the entire copper overlay on the landmark building. The roof that was replaced in 1994 is leaking, and we're not sure how extensive the leaking is, and it may be necessary to actually pull back the copper, perhaps even replace all the copper on the landmark auditorium as well as all through the loggia. But that remains to be seen how extensively we need to effect repairs on the auditorium itself. But definitely the entire loggia, all the way turning the corner toward the new addition, that all has to be replaced.
Thank you. Seems like just yesterday.
Time flies when you're having fun. Oh, we got a question over here. Just a second.
Yeah, I was just interested in knowing what type of health insurance plan or insurer is presently used for the staff, and how extensive is the coverage that it would provide? Thanks.
Yeah, great question. So we transitioned to the UUA's recommended health insurance, which is through Highmark or Blue Cross Blue Shield, and we offer, we pay 85% of premiums for both staff and dependents, which is generous. Does that answer your question? Dental is also offered, pension, vacation. Vision is, yes. It depends, but $950 for an individual is what rolls off the top of my head, and then for family, I think it's like $1,800.
Mental health coverage?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, Connie?
So I'd just like to say that every year we seem to get a little better at presenting the budget. And thank you, Monica. I'm sorry you kind of had to have the choke moment, but it's always good to understand what it is the money's doing. And if we can have a well cared for staff, and we can have a good transition, and we can put a social justice position to full-time, we can put a project coordinator position to full-time, and get through a ministerial transition in good order. It's good to have those goals out in front of us, because then the money really means more than just the dollars and cents. So thank you for making that connection.
More questions? Oh.
If I heard right, it sounded like there are quite a few less pledges this year than there were last year. What accounts for that?
So Molly, do you mind if I take this quickly?
Sure, go ahead.
It's not uncommon for the pledge season to continue through the fall. So we're always ambitious in putting deadlines in front of the parish, but we are actually ahead of where we were last year. I would anticipate that, again, we'll keep soliciting throughout the summer and until the start of the fall. So we're actually doing well for next year. In terms of pledge payments, that's a slightly different story. In terms of the pledge campaign, we are ahead of where we were last year. I think it was by almost $20,000, and pledge units was at about 20. I'm sorry, I just saw those numbers. $15,000 above where we were last year at this time.
Number of pledges, 15 more pledges than last year at this time.
Got it.
So we're doing good. And the other thing to remember is that people join us in the fall, and we're likely to get some pledging from that as well. But I know, personally, I'm always kind of anxious at this time, thinking, are we going to make it? Are we going to make it? So we have in the past, and let's hope we can keep doing it. Other questions? Oh. I always look the wrong direction.
So I have a question on the Sanctuary Congregation Task Force. Is there a plan to expand? I think it's wonderful to have the 4, but I would imagine there'd be wider interest than just the 4 congregations.
I don't know the answer to that, and I'm glad you asked, because I had wanted to mention that there is no way that we can be completely prepared for what's going to happen, because there are some wild variables. Kelly has been in touch with the minister at Orchard Ridge and at least one of the ministers at Madison Christian Community, and we're hoping to have a meeting this week, and that will be one of the things we'll be talking about. So I don't know at this point.
I work at James Reeb. I'm the administrator there, and they will be voting to become a sanctuary task force at their parish meeting. That's May 21st. And beforehand, they're having several fora like we had here. experts from Centro, Hispana, and other people. I would imagine they'll vote for it. I'm not sure, but I would expect.
There are other congregations that are also having this discussion in First Methodist downtown, First Baptist across the street on Franklin. These are the communities that are furthest along in that discussion. And I don't know what the timetable is for some of these other historically progressive congregations, but we would expect within the next year that others are going to be coming on board.
If I can just say, those three that Doran mentioned, 4 including CSS, those are the congregations willing to consider being physical sanctuaries and housing someone in their building. First Congregational and First Baptist have both made statements that they are in support of sanctuary, but they are not able to physically house someone. Same thing, I believe, with Reeb and Prairie. Right, so there are many ways that congregations can be involved. So we had a meeting at Centro Hispano a couple of weeks ago, and there were 11 congregations represented, and they're all over the map. There's 3 of us who say we could physically have someone, we'll figure it out. There's Temple Beth Israel was there. They would love to house someone, but they're in the search for a new rabbi. And they said, we don't want to house someone and then have a new rabbi come in and say, I'm not in favor of this, sorry, you need to leave. So, but those congregations are willing to say, when you need groceries delivered, we will be there. When you need companionship care, we will be there. So the good thing to know is, if we do this, and if it gets to the point where one of the 3 of us, or all of the 3 of us, are physically housing someone, we will be part of a network of congregations. So altogether, several thousand members between the congregations in the city who are willing to support the effort. But the 3 that Dorrit listed are the 3 that are saying right now, we hope that we could have the capacity and the ability to physically house a person or persons.
More questions? Okay, hang on. Getting my steps in.
Yeah, another question about the sanctuary proposal. From this presentation seemed to imply pretty well that we would be talking about just one person, but I anticipate that the actual need will be considerably greater than that. So how will these people be selected? What criterion? And I guess the question is, how many can each place reasonably be expected to accommodate? Thanks.
Kelly and I watched a 2-hour webinar explaining the details. So here's some highlights. And it just all went out of my head. Highlights. Oh! There are some very specific criteria that the UU Sanctuary Toolkit, and hopefully that will be up on FUS's website with a link very soon. And if you are aware that the Denver UU Church has somebody in sanctuary right now, they have posted a lot of material, and it includes what are the criteria, and they're very specific. I don't know, I can't say how many. Oh, the other thing I do want to say is Centro Hispano, Voces de la Frontera are very aware that having a few people in sanctuary here and there is not going to help most people who are in need. There are other plans in place and that are being developed. So offering sanctuary is one strategy among several.
And I think the important point is that just as Rosa Parks rode that bus, this is going to be a political statement that says this is not the way we are in America, but we aren't going to be able to protect everybody. If we can protect one in some sort of a political statement, then that would be the goal.
So when First Unitarian Society made the choice to support the Black Lives Matters movement, there were some physical defacements of property and other such backlash from those that did not have like values. This is going to be another big, bold political statement. And I don't like to think of crosshairs on top of our sanctuary, but there are those in the community that will see this as an affront to their agenda. And I'm wondering if there are, or those that we would be providing sanctuary to could be targeted for symbolic reasons. I'm wondering if the sanctuaries that exist have had to deal with that, and if we can be proactive in ensuring that we can minimize the impact of those type of people and protect this sanctuary and the sanctuary of those that we bring in its doors.
Those are very legitimate concerns, and we have started talking about them. And again, it's hard to predict. What we've heard so far is that it's a real possibility, but it hasn't happened. That doesn't mean it won't. We have checked with our insurance, and we are covered for a number of possibilities. Right now, something that's being discussed, and there's been no decision, and we're going to be trying to find as many experts as exist. For example, some people have told us that as long as the person is on our campus, that's good. Meaning that if the person was housed in this building, they could conceivably go over to Isom House. Other people have said, you want that person in the building that houses the sacred space. So those details are important, and I don't have all the answers yet, but we're looking into it.
Is that in reference to whether the person might be detained?
I'm sorry, what?
Yes. Wanted to know if that was about protecting the person who might be detained, and that's stuff that you're talking about, which is slightly different than what he was talking about.
I think it's both, because there would be significant consequences for us if the person we were giving sanctuary to was attacked. So I think it's both.
I'm not chasing you. I'm not chasing you. Really, I'm not.
I'm Elizabeth, and I know there's a lot of stuff out there about, because there have been shootings as you know, things have occurred, and so now there's a lot of information about a congregation preparing for any kind of disaster. It's, the information is there, and there are UU congregations that are ahead on this and have, things in place and are ready. And I know we have some stuff already ready, and so we just need to continue to get trained, people get trained and know what's going on if there's something up, so that certain people are very protected, that the children here, the young people, and that other people know what to do.
Yeah, I can just say quickly that we have something like a 50-page document that outlines all of the different steps or procedures that we would undertake in different emergency situations. It's not explicit, the one that we're discussing now, but I think it does create a framework for how we would proceed in case of an emergency. So yes, I think there's additional training that would be needed if we selected to move forward as a sanctuary congregation.
The task force is going to be holding at least 2 Q&A sessions coming up. One's on May 15th from 6 to 7 o'clock in the Landmark, and the other one is May 21st from 12:30 to 1:30, also in the landmark. So I hope to see a lot of you there.
And we're going to take one last question here.
Okay, based on the response to my last question, I have a more specific one, and that is, have there been any cases at the Denver UU Church of additional people wanting sanctuary there, given the publicity given to this one woman that's in there? I mean, I could see conceivably you might get a situation similar to what happened at the West German Embassy in Prague in '89, or the Peruvian Embassy in Havana back in 1980, where you would just have a mass that would be out of control.
No.
No.
That's not anything that this is about. I mean, I can't say 100%. I don't know what's in people's minds. But my guess is the people who are most affected by this are quite knowledgeable about what's going on, what the options are, and that would be like last on my list of concerns.
I think that it's not unreasonable to think about it and worry about it, but I think, what we're hoping is that the effort that our committee here has been working on and the other churches will be to try to make sure that it works for us. And I don't know what we would do if 25 people showed up at our door, but I don't think that that's where it's going to happen.
Part of the strategy is that this is, and as Rob was alluding to, Rosa Parks, that this is planned in detail ahead of time with the person who's seeking sanctuary. And some people who investigate whether they want to seek sanctuary end up deciding no because it's very stressful. The person will have consulted with lawyers, will have a legal team, so a lot of this gets talked about ahead of time.
Well, a good beginning on the conversations that Dorit and Kelly and company are going to lead. I know that all of you are folks who probably done your pledge and paid your pledge and maybe even increased your pledge. But when you're talking to your buddies out there in the rest of the church, you can encourage them to answer the phone when we call them and say, yes, please, I would love to pay my pledge now. So thank you all very much. And I hope that you have some time to go out and enjoy the rest of the afternoon.